Welcome back to Ontario Cryptids, everyone. I am so glad to have you here for another exciting episode. Today I have 4 incredible encounters lined up that are sure to captivate and intrigue you. If you're enjoying this type of content, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our amazing community. You won't want to miss what's coming next. And if you've got an encounter of your own, I'd love to hear it. Send your stories to ontariocryptids@gmail.com and it could be featured in a future episode. Let's get started. The year was 1978 or 1979, opening day of deer season. We had set up camp the day before and later scouted for the night hunting spot. I chose an area within sight of water from Clark's Hill Lake, with lots of deer signs. Saturday morning, opening day, I made my way to my tree stand around 5 a.m. A dense fog was beginning to roll off the lake, and with the darkness and fog, visibility was zero, even with a flashlight. Before daylight, I began to hear screaming-like sounds coming from an area above me. They seemed to be getting closer as the minutes went by. I was about 25 feet off the ground, and I still was frozen in fear. I could tell the sounds were close by the brush and leaves making a noise, and with a few minutes I could hear it past underneath my tree. I tried to shine my light, but it was useless with the fog and darkness. Whatever it was, it continued to pass me, still making those sounds. The fog lifted that morning at around 10:30. I saw one of my hunting camp buddies walking near my area. I whistled to let him know where I was, and he walked over and began to explain what he had heard that morning. I told him it had passed underneath me but didn't stop. We told our stories to the other camp hunters, but they had been in another area and had not heard anything. I went back the following weekend and waited till the crack of daylight to walk to my stand. I didn't want to meet this thing before daylight. Around 7:30 a.m., I killed a deer and went back to camp. My friend who had heard the sounds the weekend prior came back to camp with matted hair he had found near his stand, and when he unrolled it, some were almost 20 inches in length. Several months later, he told me he had someone at the University of Georgia look at the hair sample and was told that they were not horse or pig hair, but without further testing, they couldn't determine what it was. To the best of my memory, it was dropped without any further checking. That's been over 27 years ago, and he has since passed away. This happened about a year ago in 2024 at a small restaurant I used to work at in the South. First of all, I've never seen or heard anything that wasn't there, so I have a sound mind. I figured I would share this here since there aren't many people in real life who'd believe me because of how strange this encounter is. For context, I was working at a restaurant when hardly anyone was there. Most of the staff at that time, skeleton crew, had gone on a break, and it was just me in the back kitchen. I went to put some frozen stuff back in the freezer and went towards the tables, and out of the corner of my eye, clear as day, I saw a humanoid figure standing in the doorway, its head peeking around a corner, and as soon as it realized that I saw it, it ducked away towards the front line dining room area. I very quickly walked, more like ran towards the doorway, and no one was anywhere near the entire area. No one was even at the front line getting food. Even though it was for less than a second, I remember every detail about its face, or lack of. I know it sounds like a horror movie scene, but I promise to anyone reading this, it just had a deathly pale skin stretched over its face where eyes and nose or mouth would be. I went over to the doorway after I couldn't find it, and I measured where I saw its head at compared to the top of the pizza ovens, and it was around 7 feet tall. No one anywhere near that tall works there. At the time, I was the tallest at 6 feet. I'm probably going to regret telling this story. Everyone I know will probably laugh me out of this country. I myself for many years would hoo-ha and laugh every time somebody would mention these creatures. Here it goes. I live in Northeast Texas, not far from Texarkana. I've lived in Texarkana area for quite some time. I don't coon hunt anymore. My business has become more demanding. Coon hunting is a sport that really demands a lot of time. I found I didn't have enough time to devote to it, so I got rid of my walker hounds. I was so into the sport at one time, I had hunting licenses in 3 states. And I had several night champions to my credit. Several years ago on a cold night in January, February, I believe it was 2001. No, actually 2000. I don't remember the exact date. I was coon hunting in Miller County, Arkansas. I don't know exactly how far from Mercer Bayou we were, but I know we were in an area that old-timers call Thornton Wells. While we were hunting in this flooded timber, our dogs split treed. I went to my dogs who had treed on the other side of the swamp. The other guys went to their dogs on the other side. I got to the tree where my dogs were treeing at and looked at my coon and caught my dogs. Everything seemed okay, so I decided to amble back towards the others. I could just barely hear their dogs treeing way across the bayou. Suddenly, I heard something walking in the flooded timber. Bear in mind, this whole area is 8 to 15 inches flooded with brackish swamp water. I could tell by the gait that it was someone coming in the flooded woods. So I called out to them thinking it must have been one of my hunting companions. To my dismay, no one answered. Instead, all I heard was a deep-throated gurgling growl and the awfulest putrid smell. The smell was like when you kill a wild hog and grab him by the hind leg, and then you give out dragging him and put your hands up to your nose and the smell knocks you over. I also heard a whining kind of whistling sound. My dogs were on my leash and were whimpering. Now, these weren't just any dogs. These were the UKC Lipper-bred walkers. They probably weighed in at close to 100 pounds. They could rip a 20-pound coon apart, yet there they were, cowardly crouched behind my legs, whimpering. I had seen them tear coyotes to shreds that had tried to come into a tree where they were treeing. I couldn't understand it. Still, in all, I was not concerned about any of this, and I got my dogs and started back across the swamp. After a few minutes, I heard the sound of someone or something walking into water again. So I stopped and turned around, and standing right behind me was a creature of immense size. He must have been at least 8 or 9 feet tall. He was covered from head to toe with real dark hair, and when my coonbuster coon light hit its eyes, his eyes glowed like a deer in a spotlight. Talking about the hair on the back of your neck standing up, I was scared. I don't ever remember being that scared. He made a hissing sound and reached down and took his hands and started scooping water and throwing it up at me and making a deep throaty noise. My dog started chomping at the leash and growling, trying to get at it, having regained their bravery. I grabbed the leash and tore out across the swamp, so scared that for a while I went in the wrong direction. I got to a big cypress tree and caught my breath. I could hear this thing behind me, sounded like it was about 100 yards or so back. It followed me for a while, then after a while I could hear it across the bayou making a moaning sound and moving away slowly. I got my breath and my compass and bearing and started walking to the truck. When I got there, I didn't say a word to my friends about what I saw and heard for fear they would laugh me down. Needless to say, I never returned to Thornton Wells, nor do I plan to. For a long time, I kept this to myself. I even had nightmares about it. The only person I've ever told was an old coon hunter from Dodge Ridge, Arkansas. He's dead and gone now, but I do remember something he said to me that day. He said, "If you're smart, you'll keep this to yourself. I know from experience that people will laugh at you and call you a liar." I have hunted in the Sulphur River bottoms many nights, but never have I ever seen anything like that before or since. I'm not one for tall tales, but I thought I would share this terrifying ordeal with you, all because it seems we might have something in common. My name is Steve, and I would like to share my sighting with this group. Having looked through the internet on various websites, I noticed other sightings in the New Brunswick area, one and around the same time as mine. During the summer of 1997, July or August, I set out on a solo vacation from the Ottawa area to travel to eastern provinces. I first visited a friend in Red Banks, New Brunswick, where I left my car and trailer. The next day, I got on my motorcycle and headed to Couchibukwak Provincial Park on the recommendation of my friend. The next morning, I got up early and decided I would take advantage of what trails the park had to offer. I picked the bog. This was the largest bog I had ever seen. It is something like 1.5 kilometers wide by 0.75 kilometers across. You walk along a short trail through the forest and then, wow, you are presented with this incredible bog. I climbed a small viewing tower located at the start of the bog and took in the spectacular view. I remember saying to myself, let's see what animals I can spot. And then seeing something and saying to myself, there's one. I pride myself in having exceptional vision, and I focused as best as I could on this animal. It was directly in front of me at an estimated distance of 500 feet. It was a grayish-brown color from head to toe. It was walking away from me. I never once thought it was a man, as its coloring was too close to its surrounding and too uniform. The only problem I had was it was walking upright. I watched it until it was out of my sight, desperate to get an identification. Once I couldn't see it anymore, I descended the tower and walked along the boardwalk through the bog in the same direction as the creature. At the end of the boardwalk, I thought about going into the bog to look for it, and fear of the unknown caused me to turn back. Before leaving the bog, I went back up the tower, and it was exactly where I saw it the first time, except this time it walked right across my field of vision from right to left. It was close enough that I could see light between its legs as it walked, and I noticed its lower legs and arms seemed longer than a human's. It appeared to be picking things up as it walked. It didn't need to bend over or stop as it picked up some kind of plants. I watched it for about 20 minutes, and it seemed to me like I was looking at a shadow. I felt like it knew that I didn't have either my binoculars or a camera to get a closer look at it. It was just out of my visual reach to make a definite identification. During my vacation, I walked a lot of trails, and on 2 occasions I walked off the trail into the bush. I noticed a light from deep into the bush as if there was an opening, and sure enough, I found what appeared to be a natural road trail about 20 feet wide as far as I could see either way. Being in these openings felt strange, so I would turn back and continue on the main trail. At one opening, I noticed an impression in the ground that appeared to be in the shape of a footprint. Although it wasn't clear if it was a footprint, it seemed odd because it was about an inch deep, like an impression of a rock, but there was no rock. Well, it feels good to get this off my chest. I've always thought that Sasquatch existed from a young boy and growing up in the 70s, but it was the furthest thing from my mind when I woke up that morning. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. I hope you found these 4 encounter stories as fascinating as I did. I'm also excited to share that I'm working on improving the visual aspects of our episodes to make your viewing experience even better. So stay tuned as I continue to make changes. If you love what we're doing here, consider becoming a member to support the channel and enjoy some exclusive perks. Now, let's acknowledge the current OC members. I would like to thank Elizabeth, Jim, Diana, and Teresa for their contribution and support as members of the OC membership program. Your support is truly appreciated. If you have an encounter story to share, I'd love to hear it. Send it to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story with the OC community. Guys, last but not least, don't forget to hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and tap the bell icon so that you'll never miss an episode. Wishing you all a fantastic week ahead, and make sure to join me next time for another thrilling episode on Ontario Cryptids.